Welcome, listener, to Right Here, Right Queer. This is Sebastian Nothwell, here today, joined by Tess Carletta.
Hiya.
And I'm so sorry, but today we have to talk about groveling.
All right, start begging. Sebastian, get at it. Start confessing your sins.
Our biggest sin is omitting it up to now, but we'll try to repent earnestly by info dumping about it for an hour or so.
To begin the info dumping, tell me, what is groveling? What do you consider groveling?
Groveling is apology, but big.
Tell me more.
End of episode. No. It is fictional penance that satisfies the reader's sense of justice, typically in a romance.
Okay, I like this take on it. I like that you clarified that it's, in this specific instance, we're talking about fictional.
Absolutely. It's a stellar romance trope that unfortunately is rarely employed and even more rarely employed well, but here we are.
But do you think there are any other genres where you could, in theory, get away with it? Like, not thrillers. Like, what is the serial killer gonna do? Apologize to the victims? No.
Some groveling happens in the Saw franchise, but I don't know that it works out for anyone involved.
Yeah, it's not satisfying. Like, the victim's like, please don't kill me, please don't make me do these terrible things. And Saw's like, tough nuggets, bitch.
True Saw fans know his name is Saw.
I've actually never seen any of the Saw movies, and that's apparent.
I mean, that's basically it. Saw gets the guys to the big trap and makes them do terrible stuff, and they get real whiny about it. And he says, no, you gotta do it anyway, and that's the film.
That's what I thought. Am I wrong? Okay, any fucking way.
Listeners, comment below. Please educate us on the Saw franchise.
Oh.
Did we nail it? Review it.
Where's Nina when you need them?
Here's the thing. We can grovel about our inability to explain this Saw franchise to Nina when they hear this episode.
They will. To get us back on track, I think that there's probably a lot of groveling in drama also, because drama has a lot of people making really fucked up mistakes. All of the mistakes that people are making in drama books tend to be more like things that you would have to grovel for in order to repent for them the way that they need.
I would agree, yes. Very much so.
That satisfied my own question, because I was like, what? Who else grovels? It can't just be bitches in love. No, it's bitches who fucked up. That's the main category.
If there is a genre where someone has fucked up, God willing, someone is groveling.
God willing. What makes for good groveling?
It needs to satisfy the reader's sense of justice on both ends. So the offense, first and foremost, has to be worth groveling over.
Okay.
It has to be something so terrible that a mere I'm sorry won't cut it.
There you go.
But not so terrible that even the reader could never forgive them. Which makes it a very delicate balance to strike, which may possibly explain why it's so rarely done well.
Yeah. So, do you think that groveling is more in the actions or in, like, the dialogue? Like, groveling is really satisfying when there's really good dialogue, or groveling is really satisfying when someone says a lot of things but then their actions speak louder than their words.
I am very much of the opinion that talk is cheap and you need to show you're sorry through your actions.
Slay. I'm inclined to agree.
A grovel that begins with words is good, and possibly even very good, but it can really only go so far, especially depending on the self-awareness of the character in question. Because, like, they may know they've fucked up, but most characters probably don't have the vocabulary to go full therapy speak in their apology.
Yeah.
Like, if your medievalite says that he's taking accountability and apologizes for gaslighting their beloved and resolves to heal their inner child, something has gone awry with your dialogue. I don't know that two Victorians are looking at each other and saying, oh, I'm acting out because of my childhood trauma. Anyway.
I feel like this is an important distinction, because when we hear the word groveling, we automatically, like, have this image in our mind of people, like, on their knees begging and pleading in a really pathetic and cliche way. And I think that might be part of the reason why some people avoid the trope in general, is because they don't want it to be cliche and overwrought.
To your point, part of why the word overwrought might apply to a bad grovel is that if the offense does not fit the grovel, then yeah, it does seem overwrought to be like, I'm sorry I chipped your teacup, I'm gonna be on my knees sobbing for 20 minutes if that's okay. Like, that's... There's a mismatch there.
Okay, this is my hot take as someone who has predominantly dated men in my life. When someone fucks up really bad and they start begging in a really dramatic way for forgiveness, it just reminds me of like every time I've seen a video of women who get cheated on and the guys are like, no, baby, like it wasn't me. I wasn't myself. Like, girl, you know I love you. And it's like,
yeah.
That's what I imagine groveling is. Because I love it in books, but I'm like, I still have this weird association with it. And I think that's the association. So I think part of it too is like what you said, it can't be an unforgivable offense. If you made a mistake and you're emotionally intelligent enough to apologize for it in this dramatic way, then why were you not emotionally intelligent enough to not make it in the first place?
That leads very nicely into my next point, that the groveler has to be genuinely repentant. They must understand what they've done wrong and accept full responsibility for it. And the groveler has to change in such a way that the reader can rest easy knowing they won't offend again. Like, you have to give the reader that character arc that shows that they're a different person now and that they're not going to fuck up in the same way again, because otherwise that happily ever after isn't really gonna sit well. Like, it's not gonna feel true and real.
Yeah.
And I think you can do that by having the groveler act rather than talk, by doing all in their power or more to repair any of the damage they've caused. If I can use a lighthearted example.
Please.
If the groveler's carelessness rips a hole in their beloved sweater, yes, they could apologize with words. They could even buy a new sweater, but it might feel more satisfying to the reader to have them repair the sweater through darning and weaving, and to put in the time and show that they understand how much effort and skill it took to create the sweater, and to prove that they fully appreciate the damage they've caused and are willing to go above and beyond to fix it. So if the groveler has done something worse than ripping a sweater and tries to apologize with less effort than it would take to darn a hole, that is a wildly unsatisfying grovel.
Damn. You sold me hook, line, and sinker on the analogy, on the explanation. I'm sitting here like, shit. Groveling, man.
I just have a lot of feelings about this trope because I want it so badly and I so rarely get it.
So, to that point, what makes groveling unsatisfying in stories?
Number one, the offense isn't worth groveling over. If they're groveling because their beloved caught them talking to a relative and assumed they were cheating, like, that's not, they didn't do anything. They've done nothing wrong. Why are they groveling?
Yeah. It's my least favorite trope.
Why are you still mad when, like, 5 sentences between the two of you could have fixed this? Like,
We're gonna have to do a whole nother episode on miscommunication and why it's the worst trope that anyone ever invented.
And why I used it in my novels.
You know what? I think I accidentally used it too, because in one of the reviews of Kitten Basie, someone was like, I hate the miscommunication trope. And I said, the what? Is in what book?
The whomst?
What do you mean? The whomst? Anyway, you don't have to grovel for miscommunication when you've done nothing wrong. No groveling necessary. Jeez Louise. I think another way that groveling can be unsatisfying is if the person doesn't grovel enough and the opposite person accepts their apology.
Yes, that was precisely point number 2. The groveler is forgiven too quickly.
I knew it. I knew it was coming.
Hive mind.
Hive mind.
Synergy.
Well, because, not to bring it back to, women in shitty relationships, or just anyone in shitty relationships, but, how many times have you heard of, a friend who had a crappy partner, and the partner fucked up, and then they go back to their partner way too easily, and you're like, girl, dump him. That's not satisfying, and for readers, if you're gonna have this climactic conflict, where someone makes this ginormous mistake, you're like, oh man, this sucks, but I'm sure the resolution is going to be really satisfying to make up for how uncomfortable it is to sit through this conflict. And then, no, it's not.
And then nothing.
And then nothing.
We get nothing.
A nothing burger with left beef.
I think this is also why a lot of villain redemption arcs fail, because, I love a villain redemption arc, but it's so rarely done well, and more often it's along the lines of, he killed millions, but he's really sorry, so it's hero time, and it's just no. You have to fix what you broke.
Yeah.
You have to do something about it.
Sometimes writers fall into the trap of, when we get to the point where things need to be resolved, people are like, we have to get to the end of this book. We have to keep the pacing right. And I'm like, but what if we just held our horses? What if we just chilled the fuck out and lingered in this moment? If the climax or even just any conflict in the book, if we're leading up to this conflict we want to be able to piece it apart and resolve it in a satisfying way. But like, the resolution of the conflict should not be the cost of the pacing of your book. And I think that's possibly one of the things that like keeps us from having satisfying resolution and Groveling is because we're rushing it. But you just gotta like take the time, because as you said, proper Groveling takes time and takes effort, and it can't be done in 20 minutes or less.
Extremely true. The third thing I think that makes Grovel unsatisfying is when nothing in the Groveler's character has changed and the reader has no reason to believe that they've learned or grown beyond offending again. Which is, again, why an apology of actions is so much more satisfying than an apology of mere words. And to that, point 3A, throwing money at a problem is just generally unsatisfying.
Yeah.
Because if you have enough money to solve your problems by throwing money at them, then the money is meaningless to you, which means the apology is meaningless, which means the grovel is unsatisfying.
I sense that this example has come from something specific. Care to share?
50 Shades of Grey is one good edit away from being a really compelling drama.
Oh my gosh, that's a hot take. But a compelling one nonetheless.
It's one good edit away from being a psychological thriller of a woman who finds herself trapped in a relationship with a rich man and has to conspire with his exes to get herself out of it. But no one wants to do that, so here we are.
Does this imply to us listeners that you have read 50 Shades of Grey?
I tried reading it, did not get very far. The films really elevated it. The films made it something that could be experienced in full, as opposed to, like, tapping out at chapter 3 because it's too cringe.
Damn, that's really saying a lot, too.
Oh, yes. The one grovel, I think, had incredible potential, but was not carried out in the way I would have preferred because, frankly, the creators were not interested in telling that kind of story for a wild variety of reasons. It is the historical drama The Last Kingdom.
And now I gotta fucking look that up. Hold on.
Which tells the story of the Viking invasions of England.
I've never heard of this.
It involves the actual factual historical Alfred the Great of England, or of Wessex as he says it in the show, and the fictional Uhtred of Bebbanburg, an Englishman kidnapped and raised amongst Vikings, but returning to England, and now he's constantly flip-flopping between the Viking England loyalties, and because it's protagonist-centered morality, it's not nearly as compelling as I would wish, but here we are. There is one scene where Uhtred does a violence in a church, and Alfred, being a good Christian, takes great offense and says that Uhtred has to do penance by literally crawling through the mud to kneel before Alfred. And that could have been incredible. And I think it's a testament to the strength of that scene that I'm still talking about it 10 years later. But
But it was unsatisfying.
The groveler was not genuinely repentant, the offense wasn't worth groveling over, and furthermore, the relationship was not textually romantic in nature. So
You said these bitches weren't gay, therefore.
They weren't. Like most things, I find straight stories deeply unsatisfying, and I'm so sorry to straight people. But in this case, it was not enough for me personally.
What did he do to the church?
If I'm remembering correctly, he had a sword out and refused to put it away, and they were like, "Put your sword away, sir." And he was like, "No, rar, Viking." And they were like, "Alright, well, to the mud with you." And, like, out of context, the crawling through the mud is great. But in context, there's a lot to be desired.
Yeah, no. I don't know about that one, Chief.
How about you? Any disappointments in your groveling history?
Anne of Green Gables, like, Gilbert's a bitch to her, and then he doesn't apologize for it, and that's really it. Like, if you've ever watched the show Anne with an E, it is an adaptation that is based on the original classic Anne with an E, and in both of those versions, Anne attends school and is generally ostracized for not only being redhead, which was apparently considered ugly, but being an orphan and just generally being a very extravagant, imaginative young little girl. And Gilbert Blythe enters the scene, and he's fascinated with Anne, but because he is a young Edwardian boy, he does not know how to handle his affection, so he teases her, and it's to the point where she ends up hitting him with the slate, and she hits his face, and then she gets in trouble for it. And later, you know what though? I needed to think this through more. I do think that this is a good example of groveling. So I'm going to shut up now.
What makes it good? What makes it good?
Basically, Gilbert tries to earn back Anne's attention and her favor because he realizes that he's fucked up. And at the end of the book, they're both vying for this same school where they could be teachers. I think it's the Avonlea school, so it's the one in their hometown, and it's the more convenient school to teach at, which means that there would be less travel involved for the one who gets to teach there. And Gilbert gives up that school so that Anne can teach there and be closer to her family after she just lost her father figure. And he ends up taking the school that is further away. But this is over the span of many, many, many years. So it starts out where he's not groveling in the right way, but in the end, he makes a sacrifice that makes Anne go, okay, maybe this guy isn't so bad.
I do love a big self-sacrifice that also solves the problem at the source of the conflict.
Very true.
Now that's what we call a satisfying grovel.
So what are your examples of good groveling?
I know as I speak I am living out a historical romance author cliche, but goddamn Mr. Darcy of Pride and Prejudice, am I right?
Yeah. Nothing says, I'm sorry I accidentally called your family annoying and poor, like bailing your stupid sister out of her shitty marriage.
One of the few, and some might say the only, to do it right. Here's a quick Mr. Darcy walkthrough how to apologize for offending the woman you wish to marry, insulting her family, and ruining her sister's life. Step 1. Apologize through words, as he does in the letter immediately after Elizabeth rejects his proposal, where he's like, I'm marrying you despite your family and your ugly personality. And she's like, hey, what? Do you want to walk that back, bud? So he sends a letter saying, hey, I said some stuff. These are the reasons I said the stuff. I'm gonna leave you alone now. Bye.
Bye.
Step 2 is apologize through actions, when he rescues Lydia by forcing Wickham to marry her by throwing money at the problem, but he does more than just throw money at it, so he's a few steps above Christian Grey.
Oh my god.
And repairing the damage he's caused by reuniting Jane and Bingley, who he had unjustly split up. Step 3, ask for forgiveness once. And in doing so makes it clear that he is more than willing to walk away and never bother her again if she would prefer that, which is his second proposal.
If your feelings were what they were last summer, I don't remember the line.
The line that sticks out to me is, one word from you will silence me on this subject forever, which, like, goddamn.
There it is.
That's all we want. That's all we ever want. All we want is a willingness to shut the fuck up. Which I realize is ironic coming from a pair of podcasters, but here we are.
So similarly, does this mean that Rochester does not have a satisfying amount of groveling? Because if I'm remembering Jane Eyre properly, he does not confess that he has his wife in the attic, and Jane has to find out the hard way. And then basically she leaves, the estate burns down, and then she's like, oh, well, I feel bad for you, and I still love you, and I feel bad that you've lost everything and your wife died, and let's be married now. Like, does he grovel at all? Like, he grovels a little bit, but, like, I don't know, you know?
I don't recall any groveling, but I've never really enjoyed much Bronte work, and Bronte fans scare me, so I don't know.
That's an interesting take that I hadn't heard from you before.
Bronte fans are very devoted, and their passion is admirable, even if I do disagree with them on several key points.
Any other examples of good groveling?
That is the one I have. Which does, I think, speak to my desperate hunger for more good groveling. So listeners, if you have any examples of groveling that you have enjoyed, please, please, please write in.
We would love to hear your examples of good groveling.
Right here, Right Queer Podcast on Instagram. Hi, baby boy. My sweet baby boy, I was doing a call to action. You cannot. You've had 2 dinners. Why are we yelling? Hi.
That's a loud cat.
I know, my baby boy. Yeah. You have big feelings, I know. Sorry, what the fuck was I saying? Oh, right. If you have any examples of good groveling, or groveling you've enjoyed, or even lackluster groveling that you think has potential, please contact us by whatever means necessary, but probably more conveniently on Instagram at the Right Here, Right Queer Podcast.
We are on tenterhooks for your grovels.
And we are so, so, so sorry we weren't able to come up with any good grovel examples for you, and we swear we'll change.
We'll write them. We'll be the change that we want to see in the world.
I dearly hope so.
If we've enticed you with our knowledge of groveling and other literary subjects this episode, and you want to find more of our discussions, you can indeed find us on Instagram, but we're also on Spotify and wherever podcasts are available. Sebastian, where can readers find you and find your groveling in your books?
You can find some light groveling in Hold Fast and the rest of my books at sebastiannothwell.com.
Wonderful. And you can find me at tess.carletta on Instagram and on tesscarletta.com, and my groveling is all in Patchwork. So that's all from us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening, and we hope to have you again soon.
Bye.